I'd like to call to order the February meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board for Mexico Beach. We appreciate everybody coming. And just a reminder, we're an advisory board, volunteer. And if you have something in front of the board today, be sure to follow up, and if it's a variance or something like that, to follow up and go to the council meeting, which is Tuesday, I believe, because that's the next step in the process, and you'll want to be there for that. We encourage you to do that. So what we typically do is go through our agenda. We have a public part where people from the audience are able to speak, and then we close the public part. The board discusses the situation, and then we vote. And typically, the council has taken our recommendation, but not in all cases. So, just so you know. Okay. To start with, we have meeting minutes due to the storm, and okay. Let's do a roll call first. Jenny's not here, so I'll do the roll call. Mr. Hogan? Here. Mr. Metcalf? Ms. Metcalf?
Here.
Oh, I'm gonna pay for that one.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Here.
Driver's here. Masters?
Here.
Lindsay?
Here.
Jim Bush?
Here.
Ms. Lindsay. Okay. First one we have are meeting minutes. These are accumulation of minutes that Jenny's done a good job going back in time and from the video doing these. Adrian didn't have time with everything that was going on with the storm. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them, starting in June 3rd, ending with last month's January 2nd. I've gone through them. I just have a couple of comments on them, and then we'll see if anybody else does. On the June 1st, July 1st minutes, there's just a typo on the back page. We need to pick up tomorrow. I'll give these to you after the meeting. September 9th, there's a typo also on the back page, a minor one. And then on last month's January 2nd meeting, the wrong dates at the top of the page. But they did, I feel, represent what was discussed and what we did in those particular meetings. Does anybody else have anything on the minutes they'd like to discuss or bring up? If not, we need a motion to accept the minutes for the dates listed down there, and whoever makes the motion, if they would also include those dates, that would be great.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June the 3rd, 2019, July 1st, 2019, with typo change, July 29th, 2019, August 5th, 2019, September 9th, 2019, with typo change, as stated, October 7th, 2019, November 4th, 2019, December 2nd, 2019, and January 2nd, 2020, with a correction of the date at the top of the page.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes accepted. Okay, first one on the
Mr.
agenda.
Chairman, point of order before we get started on the meat of the agenda. According to the LDR, the procedures when we're going to be addressing the PUD are not in correct order. According to LDR section 2.03.06, the procedure is supposed to be a pre-application conference, which was completed like about a year ago. And then the next thing is the PUD development plan and application. And the way that it's listed here, we're talking about the PUD application plan after the development order. The development order can't be presented until the application plan is approved. So I would ask for somebody that's got a vote here to make a motion to change the agenda.
Okay.
So to address the PUD before we address the development.
So under that, we would do number 3 first and then number 2 next.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Dave?
I'll second.
Okay. Call the roll on that. I guess I'll call the roll. Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Ms. Metcalf?
Yes.
Mr. Carrigan?
Yes.
Driver, yes. David Masters?
Yes.
Ms. Lindsay?
Yes.
Mr. Bush? You're
Not
not
being
voting.
voted.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you, Jim, I appreciate that. Block split, 111 30th Street, we're gonna open the public meeting at this time. And, do we have anybody in the audience representing, 111 30th Street? Familiar face?
Do y'all have a plats in front of you?
We do.
Yes, we have.
Okay. So this is, 111 30th Street, currently a 0.27 acre, just over a quarter acre. And there, this is a typical 100-foot lot split into two, right, close to 50-foot lot. The west lot's a little bit wider because of the 10-foot corner setback, but essentially two 50-foot lots come on a 100-foot lot, typical on the Gulf front lots adjacent to the ends of the roadways there on that south side of 98.
Okay.
So they're just looking to tract A is 0.14 acres, tract B would be 0.13 acres.
In Gina, those, I thought I saw Gina come in. Thank you, Gina. Those meet the minimum square footage requirements once
Yes.
they're split up 54, 45 in high-density residential?
Yes.
Okay. And the setup would also meet the setback regulations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, does anybody in the audience have any comments? Yes, sir?
I own the home at 112 30th Street across the street. And I've spoken to my neighbor who lives behind me, a little bit more inland. We're a bit concerned at essentially doubling the density of development on the lot. Concerned that we might open Pandora's box if we allow this lot split, set a precedent for allowing future lot splits, and essentially we'll be preparing to open the beach to having double the number of houses that have been on it heretofore, each one being a little bit smaller. We're also concerned about parking, particularly of the inland parcel. I know you've got a 10-foot easement in the
Right.
back with the idea that the parking be underneath the house. We're concerned that that will eventually spell out for parking onto the street. While the easement may allow for parking underneath the house, we think it will probably end up with folks parking on the street. Just as a general rule on a concept of how it will affect the community, we're really concerned that this won't be the only lot split, that once this happens, it will go on and on and on and ripple, and will essentially double the number of houses on the beach in the city, and we are fundamentally changing the nature of Mexico Beach with one lot split that will essentially become a precedent for others to follow.
Okay. Yes?
It's nice to hear someone besides me actually voice this same opinion that I have been doing for so many years. But again, we don't usually see these lot splits on the beach. We usually see them inland. But it's the same thing. Just because a lot is large enough to split does not necessarily mean it should be split. And if you do start splitting these lots, you are going to open the door for multiple people who want to split more lots. And we've been fighting lot splits now for 16 years. That's a long time. And the city has, for the most part, been opposed to lot splits. So bear in mind as you look at this, that the overwhelming number of lot splits have been denied for just this reason. You start splitting lots where they were not originally platted, and you end up with density. Even though this is high density, you still end up with more than you're supposed to have. And it is a ripple effect. So please keep this in mind. For 16 years, y'all, we've been battling this.
Unfortunately, we kind of have a blank canvas in the city now, and we only get one chance to do this right. And allow unfettered lot splits now, we'll never get the genie back in the bottle. And for better or worse, this is the one chance we've got to say, we've got a blank canvas on the beach. There's only a handful of houses that exist. If we allow it to double, there's no going back.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Wait a second.
I had somebody email me before, right before I got here, so since Jenny isn't here, I'll read this
Yeah.
aloud. I told them that it would be read aloud. Nick and Ann Burt, they are at 108 South 30th Street. We're responding to the proposed replat at 111 South 30th Street that is coming before the planning board tonight. Our concerns are density and parking. The property previously had one house and parking sometimes spilled out onto the street. Will there be adequate on-site parking with two houses? I emailed them back and let them know that the parking would be per land development code and that I would read their concerns.
Okay. Lance, you had some?
I was just gonna mention that, with this being over a quarter of an acre, it meets the density for high density residential with 2 dwelling units.
Okay. And the square footage?
Yeah, and everything, it meets, all the density requirements, setbacks, meet all the impervious surface areas and parking.
Okay.
How do you access, track A?
Track A has a access easement on, track A will be the direct access off the road,
Which road?
the 30th Street.
30th Street.
Track A will be directly off the
Who's
30th
made
Street.
the upside down?
That's the right of way on the west of track A.
Okay. What streets is these lots bordering?
Just 30th Street, that's it. 30th Street and the Gulf.
So the front is the Gulf side.
Yes, sir.
Street right here, it's Gulf side right there.
Okay, so then how do you access track B?
So track B has a 10-foot access easement on the north side of track A.
Okay. Anybody else in the audience?
I was just gonna ask,
Yes.
new to Mexico Beach.
Happy
So-
to have you.
Thank you, we are too, we're excited, bought over on Canal Parkway, my husband and I. So, but was wondering, I heard the comment about 16 years and this is not a new issue. Have any feasibility studies been done to hear as far as the concerns? Because obviously I think all the concerns are well heard, and I just wondered if, like, what has been done on feasibility studies to look at if that precedents were set?
We have, I don't know about a feasibility study, the only thing I've seen, there was something done in December of 19 that looked at the, zoning and the density for townhomes. As far as this board, we have approved lot splits in the past, as long as they met the minimum requirements. And we've had, this board has also approved consolidation of several lots already this year or last year, where we've combined 3 or 4 townhomes into 3, things like that. So it's a little bit of both right now. I think we've actually got one on the agenda tonight that's a combination of combining. So not every, yes, we're seeing lot splits, we're not seeing them every meeting, but we are seeing some, but we're also seeing lots being combined and having single-family homes go on those lots instead of townhomes.
Has the board ever approved a lot split on the beach, not going horizontal, if you will, where the beach frontage remained the same, but actually reducing the beach frontage of properties yet?
Not since I've been on the board, I don't believe we have.
So this would be essentially a precedent-setting split.
That is, yes, multiple, since, in the last 6 or 8 months.
No, I don't agree with that.
I presume,
On
Have
the
the members
beach.
of this board been on board for the last 6 or 8 months?
yes.
We've
Yes.
all been.
He's-
Yeah, and I presented probably
He's talking about townhomes.
Yeah, you're talking about
You're talking
townhomes,
about
so not
townhomes?
single family?
No, the lot splits on 33rd Street, there was another one that, Zach Childs, did with Zach, and another one with Zach Farrell.
I sure don't remember any.
I don't remember them either.
The lot splits though were,
Exactly the same.
they were,
You know what?
no, they fronted on a street, both lots would front on the street.
No, sir.
I don't remember it either.
We agree to disagree, but I
Yeah.
don't recall.
I don't remember that.
And I, it's just gone through all those minutes, and I don't remember seeing anything.
I can bring them Tuesday.
I'm sorry, I just don't recall them.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay, gonna close the public part of the meeting and, ask the question of the board, has anybody had any, input, from another board member or from somebody else, or discuss this, in regards to this lot split? I have not.
I received the same email today at 4:57 that Gina read. I think I was copied on the email to Gina
Okay.
from the neighbor at 108 South 30th Street regarding density and parking concerns.
Okay. Anybody else on the board? Okay. All right, Jim, did you have a comment?
I've got a couple questions for you, Lance.
Okay.
What is the reason for the lot split?
To create two lots out of the one. that is-
Why do they want to create two lots?
That's the.
I mean, that's an important question as far as I'm concerned.
Well, if the LDR allows it and they want to do it, I mean, I guess, I don't know.
Okay, looking at the, I don't know which one it is here. We're talking about, the houses are gonna be 20 by 4,800 square feet? Is that correct?
Is that 20 by 40?
20 by 40?
No,
What?
they would be, it should be able to be somewhere between 30 and 32. I don't have dimensions of that line, that's inside of setback on this.
Okay, when I'm looking at this right here,
Yep,
what I'm reading is 20 by 40. Now granted, I'm kind of blind, but those are definitely not typical square footage for something on the beach.
that's 33 foot wide by 50 feet.
Net of the setbacks or
Sorry,
net of the setbacks?
yeah, that's the size of the allowable building to stay under the threshold for the purchase.
Okay, let me ask you this, what about the parking? You said there's a 10-foot easement. Is that 10-foot easement going to be on the setback?
Yes,
Then, can you have a driveway on the setback?
yes.
49 square feet.
There's no setback requirement off of access easements.
Those are the only questions I had.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
So they're gonna pull in, the people that lives in track B, they're gonna pull in off of 30th Street. And you've got room back here maybe for 2 cars. And if somebody parks behind A, then that seems like it's gonna just be a nightmare parking
They're
there,
gonna
the
pull
way
in
this
the
is
gate.
arranged.
Well, that's the nature of access easement. That's in the case of any.
Well, it's not the nature, it's what we got to decide. You can't just stand there and say it's just the nature of what we do. We have to make a decision on this.
All right.
This is a bad plan.
When they pull in underneath. Well, it depends on how many
Yeah,
parking
so
spaces
they
are
got
underneath.
room to shift the building, but that was an example, just say, here's the size house you could possibly fit. They can shift it seaward and cantilever their pilots to allow for more room to pull in under the house. So, but it meets the land development regulations, that's, if there's a problem with land development regulations, they may need to be updated, but as of now, it meets.
And we've heard from 2 adjoining homeowners that are opposed to this because of potential parking on the street problems, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else on the board have any comments?
I've got a comment, okay? If you look at what they're trying to do, they meet the density requirements, they meet the lot size requirements. I mean, basically, it's in accordance with the LDR, it should be granted. However, my concern is the lot size is out of place in the neighborhood. There's not a whole lot like that. If you look right down the beach, lots are a lot larger. I'm assuming the houses are gonna be smaller. I have a problem with that, and also I have to voice my concern, the same as the members of the audience, with establishing a precedent, because we could end up with all kinds of lot splits going on. Because, again, this is my personal opinion, these lots are being split for the person who's splitting them to make money. They acquired this lot through probate. They have no intention of living here. They're doing it to make money. And I don't think that's in the best interest of the city. Yeah, it's revenue for the city, but it's gonna create problems in the future. So as far as I'm concerned, for the general welfare and prevent crowding on the beach, I think we ought to recommend to the board to deny it.
I think those are good points, Jim. I would just counter that and say that we do have townhomes that are on the beach that have smaller lots, even smaller than what we're looking at. So it's not all single family all the way down through there. And I don't think you can predict into the future who's gonna live there and who's not gonna live there. I certainly would love to have them live there, but it's not our right to say that. I think what we need to do is look at the LDR and what it allows us to do, so.
I have one comment, and not to take away from everyone's idea that it shouldn't, the parking issue is what I'd like to address. I think that, the people should be able, if they have an easement to go in, then they should be allowed to use that easement. If they're parking on the street, that's why we have enforcement. We have law enforcement in the city to take care of any situation that is not appropriate. And as an ex-employee of said established police department, I know that we used to have those issues from time to time, and they're very good at taking care of those.
Okay.
Okay, what do the lots look on each side across 30th Street? What kind of lots are we looking at? Say within
Not a
2 or
whole lot
3.
at this time.
Yeah, they're right here.
We don't have a whole lot to compare it to.
So the lot across is the same as the parent parcel of this one, 100-foot wide lot. That's across 30th Street.
Okay, on the other side of 30th Street from this track, how big is the lot?
Only directly adjacent to the east,
Yes.
Lot number 7?
that's a 100-foot wide lot too.
So lots on both sides of this lot is 100-foot wide lots.
Yep, then there's two 40 to 50-foot lots on 31st Street, and then there's one street over 29th Street, there's probably 16 to 17 foot.
Are those lots beachfront?
Those are not.
Okay. I think that considering this is beachfront property, I don't feel comfortable with it going against what's already in the neighborhood. I think that's probably going to set a precedent. The parking issue to me is a problem.
One thing with the parking, because this has been an issue of a few of the things, I think the parking, rather than being a development issue, is an LDR issue. And if a single family home, which, probably 80% of single family homes on that side of the road are being rented, parking is an issue for this, it needs to be an issue for all of them. And I think that may be something that needs to be addressed with the LDR, because that's what we go to design by, that's all we have. That's the only thing we have to do about it. So if that's an issue, it can't be singled out on one parcel as opposed to the LDR that covers the whole
Right.
city.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I understand the LDR and the comp plan, but I have to really agree with this gentleman here. And the good of the community, yes, maybe we should look at changing the LDR or whatever, but, personally, I agree with exactly what he says, and I'm in favor of denial of the split. I make a motion that we deny the split.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Call the roll. Mr. Hogan?
No,
Yes.
or yes.
Yes.
excuse me.
Ms. Metcalf?
No.
Not okay. Varian? I'm gonna say no. Mr. Masters?
Yes.
And Ms. Lindsay? You both, okay. So the yeses win, so the motion is passed for denial of the split.
What was the count? 4-1 or 3-2?
3 to 2.
3-2.
Thank you.
And as we said before at the start of the meeting, remember, this is going to the council, they get the final say. Okay, next one is 107 South 26th Street. A lot split package. And do we have anybody in the audience? First of all, let me open the public meeting for this. And if I didn't, I'm gonna close the public part of that other one. Okay, so open the public hearing for 111 30th Street. Anybody in the audience have any comments? Oh, I'm sorry, 107 26th Street. Okay. Gina, can you give us a little background on this one? I think you- Okay,
I'm Tyler Marsh with Southeastern Consulting Engineers. This is a similar lot split that we just talked about here at 107 South 26th Street. The parent parcel is 0.26 acres and the client's looking to split it into 2 Gulffront lots, both roughly about 0.13 acres.
okay. And, with the lots being split, do they meet the minimum square footage size for that particular area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there anything else unusual about access or?
No, sir. You got access to tract A there, or lot 4A, coming off of 26th Street, and then there's also a 10-foot wide access easement to parcel B. Similar setup that we just discussed there. The westernmost lot, it can, see, there's a proposed building size on both of these. On the easternmost lot, it's a 35 by 50 footprint, and then on the western lot, you have a 31 by 50 footprint.
That's the lot size?
That's the structure.
The structure size.
Yes, sir.
Well, these lots owned by the same, the previous one we discussed, and this one, they're two different
This is
owners.
different.
Anybody else, from the public have any input, questions?
Yeah, so it's gonna be in a broken record, I just voiced the same objections as to the previous one.
Okay. Yes, sir?
Under your ordinances, does each parcel of land require fee simple title to the access route to any lot in your city?
I do not know.
Are these easements perpetual easements?
Haven't seen the,
Probably have to be based
Back
on
up.
land, I would think,
yeah,
but again, I don't know, but I would think.
I would assume that the owner would protect their interest on doing that.
2 separate owners.
Well, the owner.
Well, the access would be
The one
from
that
the
has the
owner.
easement, yeah,
Who's given the easement?
yeah. Good question. Anybody else? Yes, sir?
Just got a question for you, trying to understand your LDR. Where I live is single family, so I know I can't split my lot. If you're living somewhere where you own a lot,
You,
and you can split it, and your LDR says you can, how can you tell somebody they can't do with their property what the LDR says? Wouldn't that be an LDR issue, like he said, that should be addressed just like parking?
I think, first of all, if you have a single-family lot, depending on the size, you certainly, under the LDRs, can split it. As far as the size, it would have to meet the minimum size requirements, and then any structure put on it would also have to meet setback requirements.
Well, that's what I mean, that's what's going on right here.
Exactly.
So, I mean, how can you tell somebody they can't do that?
Okay, let me
I'm
answer
just asking
that.
a
Let
question.
me answer that. I want to refer to the comp plan, which is the overriding document in charge. Okay, and one of the intent, purpose intent of the comp plan is to ensure property rights consistent with the general welfare. And if the board and if the council determine that the general welfare is not going along with the LDR, in that case, they can do so.
That's why I asked, so thank you.
Yeah, we have two documents that we go by. and-
Yeah, that's why I mentioned general welfare on the other one.
Okay, I was kind of curious what that was, thank you.
Yeah, comp plan overrides the LDR.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just kind of,
Yes,
this
ma'am.
gentleman here, just a question, because I was looking also at the big picture and just wondering the precedents that's been discussed and others. And the feasibility study that I mentioned, sometimes it's like, could it be helpful? I think of facility sizing. I don't know about the wastewater, I don't know about the water lines, I don't know about, I have no knowledge on that, we're new here. But just looking at it broadly, in part with a feasibility study, that feasibility also applying to facility infrastructure, and could it accommodate it if there were an influx of splits? And I'm just throwing that out there, because I'm not impacted by that, we've got a single, well, I guess I could be, we have a single family lot, but I'm just wondering if there might be more information that could be helpful in this whole matter. I mean, we've got a whole new town and everything's been blown away, and before certain things are done, what other impacts are there? Maybe, if any, and I don't know that there are. But just wanted to throw that out there. Is it beyond parking? Is it parking only, or is it also your other infrastructure and protecting other owner property values that may otherwise be compromised?
Right, well, there's a lot of questions in there, and later on today, we're also gonna talk about that. A single-family house does affect obviously, the load on all the utilities. We do have capacity, lots of capacity right now, with the number of homes that we have, but certainly in the future, that's something you'd have to be cognizant of. The other advantage we have is, in a large number of these homes, they're second homes, so we don't have full capacity all the time, but at peak periods, we have more than full capacity because we pack them in, so it's definitely something, but we're just trying to get our feet back on the ground now and get going, so we haven't looked into the future maybe as much as we should on some of these. We just are trying to get the basics back going again. Anybody else from the board have anything to say?
I will make one comment, and that is, I understand what you're saying in terms of water and sewer, but no matter what, we still have an impact from stormwater, whether somebody's in the house or not in the house. And we certainly don't have very good capacity for stormwater, in my opinion. So, that's something that we are struggling with as a community, and we need to be aware of that and understand that that deals with some of these other types of issues in terms of what was the term you used, Kim? Something to do with general welfare, because, this is a huge problem here, and it doesn't matter whether anybody's in the house or not in the house. You're still gonna have greater stormwater issues when we do these things. So, it's just there.
Jack, did you have something?
Yeah, I understand the LDR. And I believe it was probably written in the environment that Mexico Beach used to exist in. The way that we.
No, that's incorrect. It was foreseeing what we're gonna get. Because it was rewritten in January and February of last year. And we didn't have a whole lot of input into what went into it.
Yeah, I think equally important is the input that I've heard from the public, and preserving the character of Mexico Beach, and there are so few homes right now left along the beach, that to double the number of homes along that strip would change the character of Mexico Beach. So while it may be allowed in the LDR, it may not be in the best interest of Mexico Beach to do that.
I will further say too, it was redone during that time period, but I was under the impression, maybe naively, that it was redone to try and improve the way that we approach building and development so that we were better able to preserve that character of Mexico Beach. That's my assumption.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that by doing this, we are doing that, but.
I have a couple questions. Again, the reason for the replat, do you know?
Client had a pre-existing duplex prior to the storm, and wants to split, have two single-family houses.
Okay, is the owner gonna live there?
Hopefully.
Okay, I, again, just voiced the same concerns I voiced last time.
So, I didn't understand I hadn't seen this prior to this, so I didn't know, but it was a duplex before. So you got two residences, whether you have two single families or a duplex. So this is a little different situation than the last one.
Right. Okay. Good comments. Anybody else? I'm gonna close the public part of the meeting, and, I think the board's, made some comments along the way. Does anybody in the board have any additional comments? Okay, do we have a motion?
I make a motion for denial of split request.
Okay.
Second.
Second, okay. Okay. Motion's on the table to deny. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Ms. Metcalf,
No.
Mr. Kerrigan,
Yes.
I say no. Mr. Masters,
Yes.
okay. Motion's denied based on our recommendation.
But, of course, you can always go to city council.
Has to go to
So,
city council. Yeah.
What we do, just a suggestion.
I would urge everybody that voiced opposition though to attend the next council meeting and voice your opposition.
I know Brett cast it on this one, but when they were saying that was different, it's a duplex that would become two single family. Doesn't that give a bigger scope of the preservation and the view of the Gulf? Because you've got access between the two units now where they're not adjoining.
And you're not setback, so it could be much larger structure.
Yeah, I didn't see that, I didn't know what the difference was until right at the end.
Yeah.
But, no, I just think that's interesting that you have a big duplex. I don't know what space that takes like what space does that occupy on preservation of the Gulf compared to splitting that duplex apart and having two single-family homes? Does that gain more preservation of the beach?
Technically, the square footage can't be any greater with either one based on the impervious ratio. I would assume two lots would have more open space, for lack of a better term, just because of the setback.
Yeah.
But we don't know that. We don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the square footage of what was there before and how it's aligned, so.
Well, could they put two duplexes, could they have four families there based on that? No.
No. No.
Yeah, I see the difference on that now, and again, I'm sounding like a broken record, but a feasibility study, I think, would be so helpful to understand what's in the best interest to protect what's here, the preservation.
Okay. Moving on, 2313 Highway 98. Gonna open the public meeting and ask if anybody's had any discussion on the board with this, if anybody. And just to follow up and go back, did anybody have any discussion with the last one we talked about? I did not, okay. 2313 Highway 98, is anybody here to Talk to us about this one.
Got a tree field on this one.
Maybe you'll win.
This is a lot combination. We're taking 2 lots.
Lance, would you state your name and what
No,
company
this
you
is
work
Lance
for?
Johnson, Southeast.
It's a good advertisement for you. Appreciate your efforts.
So we are, taking 2 lots and combining it into 1 lot. Reducing Mexico Beach density. So that's what it is, 2 lots, 0.08 acres, both of them, and combine them to a 0.16 acre single parcel for a single family home.
Were these townhomes, duplexes?
These were nothing, it was a fake lot.
Okay. All right. Anybody in the audience have any recommendations or anything?
What size were the original lots?
They were 0.08.
Let's get away from acreage.
Well, yeah, that's the size, and then that's the area. Let's see, L4, they were 24.91 wide and 24.91 wide.
Roughly 25 foot frontage.
Right.
Okay.
You know, someone had talked earlier about what's beside it, what's next to it, what's behind it, and kind of keeping the continuity and not having it fragmented. So, which I thought was really a good comment. You know, I don't know that I would want a lot of disparate things around where we live, and it's somewhat similarly situated on other lots, but I think it,
Well, it's in the high-density residential.
Yeah, so
So
also,
it's all zoned the same in a large area, basically south of 98. I don't know how familiar you are with Mexico Beach yet, but south of 98 is basically high-density residential.
and where this one's at, it's in a line, it's in a row of lots that are the size of what we're combining to. At some point, this was a lot, this was platted as what we're trying to get back to now, going back to the original, at some point it's split, and they'd like to build one house and combine them.
Lance, give me a cross, where is this? Give me a cross street. Where are we talking about on that?
They got an area right here. Not a whole lot of landmarks. You know where, Zach Carroll's, I don't know if anybody knows where Zach Carroll's house is at?
On 24th or 5th?
It's 3 lots to the east of his house.
Okay, thank you.
That's his is lot 11, there's 12, 13, and this 14 is in 2 pieces.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public part. Any comments from the board, input?
Okay, permitting this lot joining puts it in conformity with all the other lots in that area. It's all the lots the same size by combining these.
Okay.
So makes sense to me, although I can't vote.
Okay.
Yep, it makes it consistent with the surrounding lot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Close the board part. Does anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I'll call the roll. Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Ms. Metcalf?
Yes.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Driver, yes. Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, next one we have, which I was kind of surprised, or I don't know that we've seen one of these before, a commercial development order for 625 15th Street. Gina, is there a reason that we got this? I don't know that I've ever seen one since
Yeah.
I've been on the board. Of course, I know we haven't gotten a lot of commercial
Apparently,
properties.
this is, where the post office is.
Yep.
So apparently they came before the board, maybe not, when they opened the liquor store. So, same gentleman came he wants to take over where Rusty Wright is, Wright Realty, right there next door to the liquor store, to put in a grocery store. I started digging through the LDR, I found one spot that says a change in use to to another use allowed in the same zoning district is required, development. So I talked to the mayor and he said, take it to P and Z, bring it to council.
Okay.
So here we are.
So that's the end unit?
No.
No,
It's
no.
right in between there.
There's one between the liquor store and Rusty's?
No, it is.
This is Rusty's.
It is Rusty's?
Yes, Rusty's is leaving.
He's,
Oh, he's
Rusty has
leaving.
left.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, sorry, thank you.
It happened rather suddenly.
I guess, because, is he going somewhere else?
I'm not sure what he's doing.
Stay on task, man.
I'm sorry. I just saw him, he didn't say.
Catch up later.
Okay. Sorry.
I believe in this one, that the document wasn't signed. So
Okay.
we will assume that the document will be signed as we discuss it. Is anybody from the public, open the public part?
Hello, everybody. My name's Mark Rice, and
Ah.
I own along with my partner, Michael Brown, own a liquor store, Mexico Beach Wine and Spirits. And it's been, since the storm, the store, it's 400 square feet in a storage facility, okay, with a double door on it. It's been very meaningful in terms of the local community coming and shopping. I think we were the first ones with ice, so on and so forth. An opportunity presented itself to take the space beside us. And we don't need any more liquor, we don't need a bigger place. What we need is a market, a grocery store. And it's only 900 square feet, but I think with some creativity, we've gotten pretty creative in that little 400 square feet, those that have been there. And we make it as full service as we possibly can, meat, potatoes, veggies, milk, all of that. And we'd like to have it open March 1st. So I'm trying to follow, I've never done this before, so I'm just trying to do, Gina's been a big help, I'm just trying to do what we're pointing in the right direction, so that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Anyone in the public have any comments? Is it correction?
I
Yes,
live on
ma'am.
15th Street and I'm in favor.
You're in favor? Is it correction, that document was signed, it was another one that was not signed, so that one, the apartment complex should have a signature on that. Okay? Close the public part to the board. Anybody on the board have any comments?
This is,
Yay, I'm with you.
Yay, we're good.
But
Okay.
I'm not quite sure exactly why this is here, I mean.
Well, Gina
Gina says.
told us that she found a line in there that talks about a change in use that would come to us. And that's probably a good thing if there was a
Better
commercial
safe
use
than
that we
sorry.
weren't in favor of, at least we get a look at it rather than suddenly open up.
That's
So
free advertising.
better err on the side of caution than not, so.
Well, it's something we really need, obviously, and if they're gonna jump on it first, then we need it. We should go ahead and put a gas station next to it.
I thought about trying to get a gas truck, but I think that might be pushing it.
somebody's coming back, have you seen it?
Yeah. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve.
Second, okay. This is probably an easy one. Is there anybody opposed to this? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you providing a service to the community.
I may need to go now and keep working.
We're gonna hold you to March 1st.
I don't know where to start.
Yeah, bring me one, Mark.
Okay, time for some, we got lots of paperwork in our package, so we apologize in advance if you see us flying through and shuffling papers and stuff. Public hearing for St. Joe Bud, City Administrator.
I believe the applicant is here to present their project.
Yay.
Hi, everybody.
See that?
Next shot.
I gotta go to work. Could you pull your, there, perfect. Yeah, over this way a little bit, so Now we're blocking the audience.
We need it so
Can
they
you
can
get
see it
it
too.
over by the thermostat?
If you go on that wall, we'll be
Yeah.
able to see it.
Cell phone.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
If you need to move any of the stuff on top of this.
Hi, everybody. My name's Bridget Precis. I'm with the St. Joe Company. First off, I want to apologize for the last time we were supposed to be here. I think it was a couple of months ago, and we got confused on our part of the process. And we were not aware that we were on the agenda, but, and didn't mean to be disrespectful of your time. But we are back with our PUD application. We have been working on this for a while now. We started after the hurricane. We had some property in the city limits. We wanted to do what we could to get some housing on the ground for workers, for the residents of Mexico Beach and the airmen of Tyndall to help with the rebuilding effort. We went through a comprehensive plan amendment process, and that has been finalized, and now we're moving forward with a development program to develop the property under the tourist mixed use land use category. Our development program has not changed. If you guys have been to any of the open houses in the previous meetings, we're still proposing garden apartments, townhomes, single-family residential, and some smaller commercial areas in and around the boat ramp and south of Highway 98. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the development program. Chris Short is here. He's with Dewberry, the engineer of record, and he can answer any technical questions you guys might have.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions for our group? Yes, sir.
I've been at all the presentations you've had in the past, and looking what you're gonna do here around this boat ramp area. You have it broken down, and you have parking in here where you're gonna put more boats in and stuff like that, so people can store stuff. This whole area needs to be made bigger. Right now, that boat ramp area in the summertime, you can't get a parking spot. How are you gonna come in, put all this around here, everything staying the same for the parking, but then yet you're gonna add a whole area here for people to store boats to live back in here? This ramp is gonna have to be made bigger. Right now, there's only two launches. It's gonna be bigger, and there's gonna have to be more parking. This whole area should be moved back, so this can be extended out, because you're gonna ruin Mexico Beach. The canal is the lifeblood of Mexico Beach. Everybody uses it for fishing, and you're gonna kill it. When this gets developed, there's gonna be no room there. It's gonna be done.
Just as a point of information, realize that St. Joe Company is leasing that land to the city. The city doesn't own that land around the boat ramp. They also donated the boat ramp to the city of Mexico Beach. So right now, the only ramp, the only two ramps that the city owns is the one on Miramar, and we sold the other one, so just the one on Miramar. So this is St. Joe property that we have a lease on, that has a termination right.
And there's zero parking on their lawn.
And the zero parking on Miramar, correct.
I mean, that's just the development alone. Yeah, they own all that, but they're gonna have to do something with it. I mean, there's no way that anybody in this city could even approve anything without that being made there, because that's just gonna kill it. They'll just take away that whole boat ramp area for the citizens that are living here. Once people start moving in there, and I mean, right there, you're looking at another, 50, 60 spots just to park, trailers in a little fenced area with boats on them will launch, and everything staying the same size. And now you're talking another 400, 700 homes in the future, and 100, well, almost 200 on the other side.
It looks like when I look at the, and help me on this, when I look at the, what I have in front of me, that as you're driving into the boat ramp, the property on the left side is the area that they were talking about developing, where now most of the parking for the boat ramp is on the right side. And I agree, certainly bigger is better. The city has gone back to Port St. Joe on one occasion. You remember the ramp was smaller, the parking was smaller, and we got that additional, and then we had paved, not paved, but stone put in there so we could park trailers. So, in this plan, certainly, I think that's a good recommendation, but they aren't, capturing the land that we're currently using for the boat ramp.
No, that's true, but I mean, just looking at your development, you can push that back a little bit, and that would open up more parking, because you're gonna need it. You're gonna have to have it.
You know, we would certainly anticipate that, people living here would want to use the boat ramp, and that would cause more cars, more trailers, and those boat trailers in a truck take up a lot of room. So, we're already filling it up on a good fishing weekend, so just as a thought process.
Thank you.
When is our lease up? When is the lease up?
I don't know. I'm
We need to
thinking,
know, because then they can privatize it.
It's
and
a
we're-
20-year lease.
Well, we've already had it.
That was my
Started in
question.
2010.
Lisa, could you say that again?
It's a 20-year lease, renewable every 20 years, and it started in 2010.
Okay,
This
so
year's
we're
10
halfway
years,
through.
Halfway through.
Halfway through.
That was my question as well, is there any assurance or any way, since they own the property, that it will remain somewhat public and not become a private boat ramp?
Like St. Joe is now, it's becoming privatized.
So, till you own it. A lease is a lease, can be not renewed. They've certainly been a good partner for us and for the city, but
Bill, do we know if the city owns any property where another boat ramp could be built?
Maybe not, we sold it.
no, it was just the one across from the old, gas station.
So there's nowhere around Canal Park where a boat ramp could be installed?
Yeah.
A new boat ramp?
I think you could do anything anywhere, it's just the cost, and then where do you find a parking area that's
The parking's
big enough? You know, it's residential down Canal Road now. If you took a portion of the beach, you know, I don't think that would work.
It just seems
Unless
to
you
me that
bought property back up in the canal farther.
this is gonna
perhaps
be,
you could
this
do
is gonna
that.
be a problem, and it may be that St. Joe could partner with the city and say, okay, we're gonna take this part of the boat ramp, we'll help you build a boat ramp
They're not gonna.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they got the money.
Well,
What's the,
understand.
what's the rest of the yellow, portion on the Gulf side of 98?
So our initial focus is gonna be the north side of 98 geared towards primary housing. We're not gonna plan short-term rental, anything on the north side of the road.
But what's-
Everything in the yellow is, commercial, retail, restaurant, service, and lodging.
But there's no way that there could be any room on the south side, even if, of course, you gotta, all you're doing, I don't own a boat, everyone, so, and I live here, but I don't own a boat, so I'm a little novice about this because, you know, I don't boat, so there isn't any way that you could use anything else that is not currently spoken for that could help with the situation down the road?
Potentially, we own a lot of acreage back, to the east and behind this area, so there, you know, we're not planning to develop all of this all at once, so we'll be able to kind of gauge how it goes. It will, be market driven. And if we see that we're providing a disservice in one particular area, we can,
Do you think it'd be possible to enlarge that lease a little bit and encroach backwards to add some extra if it's needed for the building of this PUD?
I think if we were to, we would probably go east as
That's
opposed to
fine.
pushing
And that's
everything
fine.
back, and I think that's something that we could definitely take a look at. Now, this is, undeveloped, this is actually Bay County, it's not in the city limits, but I think there's some other conversations, that we could either, you
That
know,
seems
look at doing
appropriate.
that in Bay County or look at annexing
Okay.
something there as a, relief valve.
Chip, you got a
Thank you.
comment?
Point of order, yeah, everything we're dealing with here is the development order. We're not talking, none of this has to do with the PUD application. We need to address the PUD application and then the development order, because all this stuff is
Sorry.
development order.
Okay.
Okay. So in the PUD application, my recollection was that there was a issue that had come up previously regarding density, that went to the board, was approved under the new density regulations. So the question for the board is, does this meet the PUD requirements under the terms of our comp plan? I had one question. I believe that the comp plan says that if there's a PUD, a certain percentage of the land has to be set aside for recreation. I think it's 10% or something like that. Have you made allowances for that in this plan?
We do have and I believe, because we've got the preservation land use under the, along the beachfront, with trails and connections into that, and, that is, more than 10% of the acreage area. But we're also planning for recreation and park opportunities, a trail network through the open space, so we, would more than meet the 10% requirement in that.
Okay.
Okay, one of the things that the LDR allows is that on redevelopments, the city can dictate parks be built. And I think that's something that needs to be done. Rather than just, I'm sure you've got, best intentions, but if we tell you you'll do it, then it's gonna be bound to be done.
On the 10%, can that be on property that is forward of the CCL line, when that's not actually part of development?
No.
Just on the north side.
Oh, you're talking just the north side right now?
And Jim, can those parks be public rather than private?
Well, they won't be public parks, according to the LDR. That's something that I think the city should require them to do, rather than leaving it up to them.
Okay. Yes, sir?
First and foremost, we'd like to appreciate the zoning board for allowing us in here to look real deeply into this and the impact that it has, not just in the near time frame, but in the future for Mexico Beach. We all understand what Mexico Beach was before the hurricane. As much as we are all working diligently to get back there, and we want to get back there, and we will get back there, a development of this size and this magnitude has so many fingers and so much impact in so many areas that from the streets, the water, the sewer, the stormwater, the environmental studies, environmental on not just the animals, but also the vegetation that is in the wetlands that are all back there. I know because I live over in that area. And we have a petition with over 360 signatures on it that are neighbors here in Mexico Beach opposing the changes. The original changes when they purchased it in 2006, Gary Woodall was one of the commissioners at that time. He has stayed fully, and he's not here tonight because he's out of town, but he will be at the commissioners meeting. But at the same time, in 2006, this was annexed in to carry forward with a future plan and to look at what they could do. At this point, my understanding is, and our understanding is that right now they could have a density of 750. They're looking for a density from you folks, from zoning, to try to get approved up to 924 units.
It's already been done.
It's already passed.
It's already been done. And the reason behind that is all they're looking, we voted no. But the reason it was approved is because all they're trying to do is build their development in accordance with everybody else's, to bring their density in line with everything else in Mexico Beach. So they were limited in their density before. They're just trying to put it in line with Mexico Beach.
And I apologize, I wasn't aware that that was already approved in 924 units.
Yeah, we just approved it here about
8 months ago?
Yeah, and then board passed it.
I was at meetings in July and August when it came in front of the commissioners, and at that time it had been tabled till way in the future. So I was not aware, nor was probably all of our folks we've been reaching out to.
It was pretty well attended and pretty well discussed.
So even looking forward and beyond that, from the zoning standpoint, as we look at this, do we have true impact studies on stormwater, on sewer, on environmental? Do we have impact studies on just the roads? So just as an example, just right now, we took and just said that there were 300 or 400 units right here. Are they all gonna come out only right here on
Yes.
Highway 98?
Yes.
Because St. Joe Company agreed to all of us, because we live right here, our whole little community here on the other side of, we miss our old wooden bridge, but we have a new concrete bridge. But we are a very tight-knit community, as all of Mexico Beach is. We are all neighbors, and we're all here for Mexico Beach. And the impact of all these people coming out right here, I don't know what that impact study would tell you for Highway 98. Would they require a red light there? Would they? With this many houses and with that many vehicles, would a red light be required there? And is Mexico Beach good with that? All the utilities, stormwater and all, the impacted here. Like we all know, the canal is the lifeblood of a big part of our community and people coming here. It's what we're known for. And now all of a sudden, how are we gonna take all these families and all these people, along with commercial, and we're gonna all come out onto the road right here? Or are we gonna tie back in again, back into the road right here and come back out over here on 98? Tranquil Harbor is over here and is literally 30 feet from 98 coming out of Tranquil Harbor condos. I don't own a property there, but I know people who do. Everybody right here is, along the highway right here, is totally against it. And most of the people that have, or a lot of the people that have signed the petition because of the impact of just the roads and the community itself. So I'm bringing up all these points because they are real, and they are real because they impact our community as Mexico Beach and who we really are. Our character will truly, truly change as we continue to look at things like this right here and as it comes about. Is there any architectural control? Has the city and zoning got to approve that? Have they got to look at that? There are so many questions before we can even think about doing this. This is great to see the drawing, but what is it doing to Mexico Beach? What is it doing to the community? We want to grow, we want to build back.
We heard you guys loud and clear at a couple of the meetings, and we've actually installed a gate over here. So this, road connection is gated off right now.
Yes, ma'am.
And our intention is not to funnel traffic through here, but yes, to make, people come back out here, and then Chris can answer any questions you have on the other.
In regards to your concerns about the overall impact with, I believe you said, water, wastewater, stormwater, wetlands.
Can I hold you up, because I got a bunch of questions in reference to that.
Yes.
And Mario, I'm addressing you at the same time I'm addressing these guys, okay? So can I have the floor for like a long time?
Well,
I'll just close for me.
I'm doing specifics on what you addressed.
Well, let's let you respond short, and then we'll give the floor to Jim.
That's very good. Yes, we looked as part of this, this PUD analysis that we presented in the report that we submitted as part of our application with the city. Trying to keep this brief. We looked at, the water, demands for the full build out, including irrigation demand, as well as the sewer demands at full build out for the entire, land unit development. And not only do we look at them in terms of what's going on right now, we actually pulled, reports, for the city and for the county. We looked at it for the year prior to the hurricane. So we looked at it, as it was prior to the hurricane and analyzed those demands. Wetlands, there is an existing DEP and Army Corps of Engineers permit. The plan has been put together in compliance with all that, with wetland setbacks and preservation areas that are designated as preservation. Stormwater. We've gone through and, we have conceptual layout for stormwater, but as we go through phase by phase, we will be required to meet the stormwater demand, or stormwater level of service for the city as well as DEP in terms of attenuation, so flood control, rate control, as well as water quality. And I'm sorry, that wasn't very brief.
If I could, that is great. I tell you, before Hurricane Michael, we were already having so much silt and sand and all filling the canal at that time with no development around us. Okay, and now after Hurricane Michael, the crews that have been there and the teams that have been on the ground have been unbelievable. They have worked 7 days a week, morning, noon, night. I know because I've been out there with them and watched them and talked to them, and we've had great people doing that. That has all ended now, and we still have a lot of silt and all that is still in the canal and continues to come into the canal. You know, I don't know where I go with this, but I even recommend us doing a new study of the canal, the health of the canal, the environmental impacts of the canal, the environmental impact of this right here to the canal. The zoning group looks at the density and looks at all the numbers, but us here at Mexico Beach have so much here to lose that we just have to protect it in all the aspects from as all these homes get built back and families come back in here, of having the water and the sewer and everything that's here. And, you know, I don't want to throw darts here, but let me tell you, originally my understanding was that St. Joe Company was giving Mexico Beach the property they were giving Mexico Beach the property for the boat ramp. They made a commitment to Mexico Beach that they stayed at the property.
No, it's always a lease.
But now it's turned into a lease, but.
It was always a lease.
Okay.
I'm gonna cut you off and let Jim jump in.
Okay, let me start out by saying, I'm in favor of the development, but the first fundamental rule in planning is plan for the worst and hope for the best. It appears to me that you've planned for the best and hope that the worst doesn't come around. So let me start out by asking you a bunch of questions. Okay. You discuss throughout your application 4 phases, but nowhere does it identify what the 4 phases are. I'd like to know what they are, and then they need to be included in the application, because they're not in here right now.
Did you guys not get the report as part of your package yet? I think it's about it here. We actually have a phasing schedule as table 1 as part of the report.
Yeah, and we've got that, but what phase is what? I mean, you know.
Oh, well, we actually have it planned out, you know, the first phase, the townhomes, and how many units that is, first phase.
Well, tell us that. So,
well, it's on page 4 of 12 of the report, it's table 1. Yeah, so we actually have it layered out by 18 phases.
my bad. I read so much stuff I didn't see.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I understand.
Yeah, I apologize.
But I wanna make a point about that.
Yes, sir.
We got a whole group of people here in the audience that has no clue what it is. So
Okay.
maybe you could explain what phase 1 is.
Okay, well.
Phase 1 is what we're gonna be doing when we get done with the
Yeah, that's the next meeting.
Right.
We're doing master plan, big picture, and then we'll do phase 1 next. That's why we switched the agenda.
Okay, what is the estimated population of your project at full occupancy?
Approximate population for both the north and the south side, if you'll refer to the PUD master plan that was provided, it's on the TNU residential density table. Overall, approximate population, just using standard counts of person per unit, it's 2,832.
I'm sorry,
2,832.
It's on the top of this one.
That's 2 people per unit.
Yeah.
So that's gonna more than double the population of Mexico Beach.
Correct. Yeah, and, correct.
And there could be more than 2 people per unit.
So, I mean, you know, it appears to me that we're trying to rush through this thing. We're talking about doubling the size of Mexico Beach, and, you know, the public haven't had a chance to look at this thing. We need more time to look at it, but let me continue on, that's just my opinion.
Jim, just as a point on that,
That's their 20.
that number is 20 years worth.
Yeah.
It's a 20-year staging, and it goes
Still double.
down, and they're already behind, but it's 2039.
What's the cost gonna be? Okay, first of all, you talked about you wanna, right now, everybody that works for the city, nobody that works for the city lives here, okay? And you talked about, you know, building places for the airmen and stuff at Tyndall. Okay, what is the cost of each unit gonna be by type, approximately?
We don't have that information
Okay, well, let me address this then, because you mentioned the people at the Air Force Base, okay? And this is what their basic allowance for housing is per year, okay? An E3, $18,000, an E5, which is basic sergeant, $19,000, an E7, which is a little bit higher sergeant, $20,000, O2, which is a first lieutenant, $21,000, a captain, $22,000, and a lieutenant colonel, $25,000. So that's what they get for the entire year. So if they're gonna buy something, you know, it can't be around the $250,000 range. Again, I'm military, I know, okay? So you need to consider that when you go into building these things. If we're gonna follow the comp plan, and again, I quote the comp plan, provide the circumstances and conditions necessary to maintain an adequate supply of affordable housing. You know, when we get up around that range, that's not affordable housing. Well, it's affordable housing if you can afford it, but the people that we need to house can't.
But how do you change that, you know?
I don't know, it's not my job.
I mean, if they go out and build $150,000 houses, they're gonna be sold tomorrow, and the after tomorrow, they're gonna be sold for $400,000 each. I mean, that's just the price of the market. You can't, I don't know what even the term affordable.
All I'm trying to address is our concerns, and again, I refer to the comp plan, that's supposed to be the overriding document, and it says we need to supply affordable housing, and I know that people here in the public have been addressing this. I've been on the board for like 4 years, and I hear that at least 2 or 3 times a year. We need affordable housing, and we don't have it.
Isn't it true that the pricing will be set by the companies that manage the apartments and other things?
We are, so the company that's gonna be managing the apartments here is a joint venture partner with us, so we'll have some say in what those rents would be. The townhomes, we're not doing as a joint venture, we're gonna build those ourselves, so we'll have some say in what those rents are gonna be. The single family homes, you know, that's kind of a little further down the road, we're not planning any of those right now immediately. But we'll either, you know, if we sell the lot, then whoever buys the lot is going to, you know, be able to kind of set what their rent's gonna be. But again, our intention for everything north of Highway 98 is that it's primary housing or long-term rental. And we have the ability to restrict through the covenants that we record, the length of time that they can rent and put in either a 6-month minimum, a 9-month minimum, or a 12-month minimum. So that will not turn into short-term rental housing over there. That's not our intention, to have short-term weekly rental housing on the north side of 98.
Okay, Mira, this one's for you. What's the impact of this on our first responders?
And with growth, they would be paying impact fees go to police, fire, parks and rec, whatever impact fees you have go to growth. So with this, as the development goes in, they pay the impact fees and it naturally grows those departments.
Okay, you mentioned the wetlands, and you do have FDEP approval for that, that's correct?
Yes, sir. And Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay, I have reviewed your wastewater and potable water tables, and I thoroughly understand them. But my question, has the city reviewed this stuff and done its own study? Because again, it's not that I don't trust you, because I really don't. But, you know, I think the city needs to look into this in a lot greater detail than just take your word for it. We need to know that we can support this.
I think there was information in there on Panhandle engineers had looked at the numbers on behalf of the city.
Yes, sir.
And they keep questioning it.
There were a couple of times where we got requests for additional information, and we had, you know, with clarification.
Yeah, the two that I've got outlined here are still saying they doubt it.
Then we did provide the final concurrence once we went through the review process. should be impacted as well.
I think there was some
That might be
question
an
on
email
whether
chain.
the lift station capacity seems like is in there.
The lift station was the main one, yes.
Yeah.
I noticed, Jim, let me just interrupt you because this has to do with that. I noticed in, one of the statements, I read the entire mess of material. It said that the land on the west side was vacant, because it listed the land on north, south, east, and west. Land on the west was vacant, and you based your figures on the information that you had given prior. But the land on the west is not vacant. The Sugar Sands development is in that quarter-mile section between the west end of the city, which is the west end of your property, and the Tyndall line. So Sugar Sands is in there. They're working to finish that up after the storm. That's 67 townhouses that are going in there. That's just a quarter of a mile stretch of highway. They are also on city water and sewer. I saw no indication where you had factored that into it. It also does not include the 150 acres that the Sugar Sands group has on the north side, and while that is not in the works right now, it will be within the next 20 years. As you're building out, they will be building. And they plan retail and residential there as well. That has not been figured into it, so you've got in that quarter-mile stretch of highway, that additional impact that's coming very soon. Now, Sugar Sands will be online before y'all get online. So that's additional water and sewer that you have not planned for, additional traffic that's not included. So I think your figures are off. I think you need to look at the impact of that. You're also not factoring into the traffic situation, the fact that Tyndall just made the statement late last week that they're getting ready with their $1 billion influx of money to start building on a wholesale scale. They stated very clearly that at any one given day, over the next 5 to 10 years, there will be a minimum of 3,000 construction workers on the base per day rebuilding that base. They're looking to try to find housing in Parker, Callaway, Panama City Beach, but I can guarantee you that a minimum number of those 3,000 per day will be headed down this way. If you take just a third of 3,000 a day, that's 1,000 extra people on this stretch of the highway. So that will also impact this, because this will be going on as you are building and trying to rent. So I think that that needs to be factored in. While I know it's not a St. Joe project up there, it ties into all of this. And you can have all of the formulas, and the government can say, use this formula, but the reality of the situation in a case like this, with this type of massive development, is that we live in the reality of that development. And I can guarantee you that your formulas do not fit our reality in any of these areas, because you don't live here. You don't see the traffic we have in the summertime. You do not have to drive with 3,000 construction workers on the road. So while it's easy to say we meet the formulas, all of us who live here have questions about this reality. And I'm looking at that map there, which was really the only time I could actually see what the drawing was, so thank you for bringing the map. You've got 9 buildings in the first phase that you want to use as apartments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. 417 apartments, as I understand you.
I believe that first phase is, let me get the exact number so I'm not misquoting. That first phase is 216. So the apartments are going to be split into 2 separate phases. The first phase of the apartments is 9 units, and it's 9 buildings, and it's 216 units.
Okay, I think it would be helpful for those of us who live here to understand the visual of that. You want to build 9 apartment buildings. We currently have 9 condominium buildings, basically the same thing, condos you own it, apartments you rent it. But we have 9 condominium buildings with a total of 300 units in it. You want to put 9, and those are scattered around a 3-mile area of town. You want to put 9 buildings with 200 and something in it in less than 1 square mile, because your property only extends a mile down the highway. So you want to cram so much into that 1/3 of what we have here, and that is the root of most of the problems. You're cramming too much into the space and dumping it out at a single point on a highway that's already overtaxed. And we pointed this out, but it's not sinking in. I know it meets your formulas, but again, let's deal with reality. You've got people, you've got boats, you've got boat trailers, and you're cramming it in such a small space, you're doubling the amount of people that the rest of the 3-mile section contains. It makes no sense to us. I understand, your CEO at the last meeting told me that the company is building this in a certain way because they have to make their bottom line. It has to be economically feasible, financially feasible for the St. Joe company, so they have to have X number of buildings and units. I get that. I'm in business. I understand that part. However, that bottom line may not necessarily fit the community. So there are enormous numbers of questions, and this is the first of 2 public hearings, is it not? This is the first, and then the second one will be.
There's 2 more.
2 more public hearings?
The public hearings are
To
for
the
the
council.
council. For
The
the
council has to have 2, I think.
And then, the decision will be made whether to agree or whatever. I mean, I'm having flashbacks to the hotel. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. And we have only 400 of our 1,200 residents are here. We're talking 1/3 of people who are gonna have any say in this. And I think that is a travesty. And so this is being railroaded through, and I don't like it. I understand that the development has to come in. I get that. But it's the amount and the timing on this that is really deplorable. So take that for what it's worth.
Okay? Thanks for your input. Somebody else?
Yeah.
Okay, in the back?
Okay, how many of y'all live here? How many of you were born and raised here? I don't see any hands. I was St. Joe down here, and my father helped build St. Joe Bank. Now, I'm not for or against the development here, but I'll tell you this, the St. Joe Bank Company didn't come in, St. Joe wouldn't exist. That's a plain out old fact. And, now, we're in a situation here where we're gonna have to make some decisions about what our future's gonna be like. And, I'm a minister, and I have some concerns about the fact that we make a lot of decisions here, it's not singly based on prayer. And that bothers me a lot. But I will say this, whatever decisions we make here will affect our future, and we're not gonna have what I moved here to have 9 years ago. I love the community, I love fishing. Y'all saw me a lot out here. I'm just saying this, we're gonna need some development here. And whether it's this or something else, we need to sit down and do some real careful thoughts about what we wanna see in the community. It needs to be based on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right in front of you?
Yeah, on your residential portions, what's your overall average density per acre?
It turns out to be 1.97
Yes.
units per acre.
So
That's
overall-
combined on the north and south sides, 1.97 units per acre for the residential.
Okay.
There are fewer.
than 2 units an acre, is what you're saying?
Yes.
1.97, correct.
How does that relate to, there, I presume there's a zoning
High density residential is
8.
Our,
eight, low density is 6.
yeah, and our land use category here is tourist mixed use, which allows for 2 units.
Sorry, a little bit of your,
Sorry, our land use category here is tourist mixed use, which allows for 2 units per acre.
But the bulk of that density is sitting over here in one small space.
In the apartments.
Yes. Whereas you're balancing that with what's south of 98 on the water side, spread out, so that it averages 2. But you have some really, really dense areas, and then some.
Sure, the number on the north side, and this is on one of the tables at the top of the plan that was submitted as part of the packet, is 2.6 units per acre. On the south side, it's 1.0 units per acre, so then that comes to an average of 1.9.
now, not knowing this side, it looks like the representation I see on this side, which I guess is south side? No, north side?
North side.
South side, okay. It looks like you have lots of a particular size. And you were working under permitting requirements by the state. It looks like you have a lot of open space or undevelopable land, the way you're presenting it.
That's correct.
Okay, and so the overall density we're talking about is take into the fact that you do, on this acreage, you don't have a lot of developable land. I'm from the plains, you got a lot of developable. You know, you build a subdivision, bang, bang, bang. But you are working within the constraints of your zoning for density.
When the water and sewer comes online for the development, and we are required to purchase more from Bay County, purchase more service for water and sewer, what is that going to do to the overall utility bill that each of us gets? Because if the city has to purchase, that's passed down to each one of us. So it appears that we are going to end up paying a great deal more to get the water and sewer that we need to supply this development. Is this correct?
It's my understanding that we as the developer are responsible for any impacts caused by our development. So if the city has to go out and purchase increased capacity, that's something that's our obligation if it's a direct result of impacts from our development.
So that means it's not gonna show up on our water bill that the city generates to each of us?
All I can say is that I don't know how it's gonna work out on that end, but legally, we cannot pass our obligation to expand service and provide service to our development to the residents.
And on that impact fee, is that only for development work?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
In other words, like the question she was asking about passing it on, and you keep saying the impact that you pay, but isn't that just for the development work?
Well, I think that's part of the analysis that Chris has been doing to study the existing available capacity and how much of that capacity our development would take, and if there's a shortfall in there, we have to figure out what the solution is.
Yeah, impact fees absolutely are, part of each development order, but I think when Bridget was saying, impact, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she was talking about, that shortfall in the demand and whatever needs to be done to remedy that shortfall. That's what she meant in terms of impact, not your standard impact fees that deal with what the size and number of units of the development are. That's something completely
And
separate.
would we be doing a study on that before the development actually starts?
We have numbers, we've run numbers and projected out, obviously, master planning over 20 years and projecting unit counts per year. We do have those numbers that we've run. But each phase, so this is just for the plan unit development approval, but each phase of this development is going to have to come in and get a separate development order and go through permitting that includes the city reviewing, the FDP water and sewer applications. You know, the city will have to sign off on it, saying that there is adequate demand. So we do have kind of a master plan and a projection that gives an idea of a window. And then beyond that point, each phase of the development actually comes in once we develop plans. And, you know, that's all the way out through 2039. Will have to be reviewed by the city, reviewed by the city's public works folks, signed off on in terms of capacity. You know, the county will have to sign off on it, saying, yes, we have the capacity to provide to the city. The city signs off on it as owner. So there is, you know, there is a level of check at that point, and until that is reviewed and approved at each phase, then the development can't move forward.
And so did I understand right that phase one is the apartments?
The first 9 buildings.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
A couple of questions. On the south side, certainly looks very high density, right directly on the reservation line there at the CCCL. What is the average width of the homes? They're crammed together right on the Gulf?
Well, and that's
Just
the
an
coastal construction control line,
Right.
which, you know, it's not necessarily right at the water line, but, show on the right sheet. Those are 50 feet by 125 feet.
And is there any space, like, it's, there's gonna be a lot of traffic driving into only 2 roads that go to that development portion there. And lots of people will turn in and go look, and then there's probably gonna be problems with them getting out, I would imagine. But will people, if they drive on that road and looking at those homes, can they even see the water? Or is it just gonna be so dense with stacked houses, and how tall are they gonna be? And, I mean, that's your water, that's what everyone's down
Yeah.
I just, that's my first thing, just a
Sure.
concern with what's being placed there.
Sure, understood. And they will have to comply with the building setbacks and everything, so you'll have the setbacks along the lot lines and all that, and the height restrictions as well.
But if the rest of our Mexico Beach has homes that are on 100-foot wide lots,
Exactly.
then all of a sudden, you come to your development where they're squished together and lined up and no space between. Once again, you're impacting a lot more than, yes, it would probably meet the setbacks, et cetera.
And that beach, if I can find a place now that I just bought on Canal Parkway, I don't know that I'll have a chair to put in the sand. Quite frankly, I mean, look at all the people in all those homes, and they're gonna come straight across the road and sit on the beach, and we just spent $310,000 on the land to build a house. And I don't know that there's gonna be much place for a chair, quite frankly. That was question one, I don't like that. And the other question, so you've got the commercial office building that's also lodging that's gonna be in my backyard. How tall would that nice building be?
We're following the height restriction.
No taller than 48 feet.
Oh, great, okay, so I've got those people too, that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I just, it's not consistent with Mexico Beach. I agreed with this gentleman earlier here that development needs to come, but y'all have sardined everything in, and I don't either. This is great concern.
What your initial traffic showed you for your initial apartments are gonna use the same road that the boat ramp uses. You can't even get boats out now in the summertime. How are you supposed to get out on the highway? I mean, you have to have a traffic study just done for your apartments. You're gonna have to have turning lanes, a light there, some way to the boat ramp to even blend into that road coming out of your apartments.
Yes, sir. We do have traffic counts for the units and projections for those additional trips. We have presented this plan to the Florida Department of Transportation, and we've begun meetings with them. Obviously, any connection that actually happens to 98 will have to go through their review and approval with the studies and whatever upgrades and improvements to that location and that section of roadway. So that is something that you know, we're going through the process of with the Florida Department of Transportation.
But here again, let me say the reality does not match the state's formula. You have the single road, it appears, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I see only the boat, what we call the boat ramp road going out. Is that still correct, or is there an additional road? There's just that
No,
one
we
road?
have a few, well, for the section in yellow, that is
Okay,
correct.
so it's
But
boat-
there are a few
it's-
others spread out.
Boat ramp road. And, in order to turn left, you've got trucks pulling trailers and boats. You've got the bridge right there as people come over it, and since the bridge was rebuilt, they lost the sight line, so you can't see over the bridge. You've got people coming out of Boat Ramp Road, turning left, and you've got all of this additional traffic, especially if you include retail and a 75-room hotel there. This won't work. We know this. We live with this every year, and the traffic study will not function correctly. You've got to have more ins and outs than Boat Ramp Road. You're gonna have some terrible accidents, and you're gonna have pedestrians walking through all of that mess around the boat ramp. You're gonna have some terrific, horrific accidents with people and boats and traffic. The whole traffic pattern, in my opinion, has to be completely reworked. It's just not feasible.
I involve the pedestrians too, crossing pedestrian traffic.
Pedestrians crossing, because I can guarantee you, according to the last time y'all, gave the presentation, you wanted everybody to funnel down to the boat ramp where you wanted to put a walkway under the bridge to connect on the other side to go out to the beach. Well, we all know that that won't work. And you also are gonna get people going directly across, the preservation section and over the dunes to get to the beach, because they're not gonna want to walk down to the boat ramp and under the bridge to get over there. I mean, it's, your whole premise on your traffic is flawed. And you've got to understand that, because it may work like that in other St. Joe communities, but I can guarantee you that it won't work here. And you mix all of those pedestrians in with the boat traffic, and you have a horrible disaster just waiting to happen.
Lisa, I'm gonna cut you off because we've got 2 more meetings, and I know some more this will come up. Just,
Can I real quick just answer the question on the deviations that they're asking for? There's certain deviations, they said from LDC, and that was my only other question. What deviations?
Mainly, so the deviation that we have, we're not asking for any deviations from the, really the densities or setbacks or anything along those lines. The deviation, and I'm gonna find the table number exactly. The deviation that we have proposed as part of this PUD is, in terms of, deviations from roadway standards in terms of right-of-way width. So we're actually proposing wider right-of-ways than what is the standard in the LDR, because of the, desire for like a more aesthetic and easier to work with boulevard, typical section, rather than just a standard 2-lane, 11-foot travel lane roadway. You know, instead of the 50-foot right-of-way, we're proposing 80-foot right-of-ways.
On the development itself, this isn't dealing with 98, this is just the development.
Well, on the connection to 98, so within the development on the connection to 98.
So you recognize at least that has to be addressed in the part?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
now we just got
Okay.
the other pieces of it.
all right, Jim? I'm
Okay,
gonna
I
cut off
won't,
the
I won't
public hearing.
finish because a lot of the stuff that I've addressed, was gonna address has already been addressed. But there's no way in the world, I think, we're ready to address ordinance 741. There's too many questions, everything is going too fast, and I would recommend that we table 741 for more study. I think the city needs to do it, and I've got, just a minute, area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 places in the comp plan which requires the city to review stuff and to plan for stuff that I don't think has been done. So as far as I'm concerned, this is way too fast, being tried to push through. I think St. Joe, I mean, my recommendation would be, you guys need to work with Gina and somebody else in the city to work out all these issues that are brought out, and then come up with something that we actually think is workable. I think, development's gonna happen, but it needs to be controlled, and I don't think this plan is good. Again, as I said before, you're planning for the best and hoping the worst doesn't happen. It needs to be the other way around. You need to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So I would recommend that this be tabled for now for more study.
Okay, Jim, I was just gonna take a straw poll here, the audience, since it's an informational meeting. How many think we're ready to move forward? How many think we're ready to delay and reconsider and take a look again? Okay, all right.
To bring in the apartments, you said that is the first year. So that's the first phase. How many years is phase one last?
How many what?
Years. How many years
How long would it take
to
to
do
do it?
phase one?
Well, yeah, it would all just depend on the, construction schedule, but
I mean, are you looking at 1 year, 5 years?
Well, we've got, actually two phases planned for the same year, and that's the first phase of the apartments and the townhomes, the first phase of the townhomes that are in the land.
My personal opinion on this is, yes, it's moving too fast, but we still have to consider that we have people that were residents here that have nowhere to live. We have people who were residents want to stay here, and there's nowhere they can afford to live.
These won't be.
So,
These are gonna be.
Well, we don't.
but they're living in campers, so a lot of our people who are in campers could probably afford some of this. I mean, well, you gotta consider too, you live at the beach. The price of affordable living at the beach is expensive. It's expensive, but we have people here that have nowhere to live. And they have no choice but to go. I mean, could you take a leap of faith and build a couple of buildings? And see how it works, and say, once this happens, then it has to stop, because you gotta see the impact.
Well,
I mean, I don't know, because something has to happen, but this is scary.
In the interest of time, I think we're gonna move on. And a good point. Okay, Jack.
Just one question. This is the first that I've learned about the 50-foot width on the beachfront lot. We talked about that in the remaining character of Mexico Beach. In the adjacent St. Joe community of Windmark, what are your lot widths there, beachfront?
Some of them are actually 10 feet or 20 feet, because they're just little sections that actually go all the way down to the beach. When you think about that.
There, in phase one, I think there's some flag lots where you have just a very small strip. One lot has almost just a walkway easement to the, or area to the beach, and then the other lot has the house up front. And they have a driveway easement, and then the, first lot has the house in the back.
I think the houses you're thinking about though are.
I'm actually thinking about phase one that's starting to build out and has a character of its own and a profile. I'm just wondering, what does that look like compared to Mexico Beach? Compared to coming a little further down to this proposal?
Jack, we just turned down 2 applications for 50-foot wide.
That's what I was fixing to ask, thank you, sir. Didn't we just say, no, you can't take this 100 feet and make it 50 feet, and now we want to say, okay, St. Joe Company, yeah, y'all can build all the 50-foot lines you want. I'm sorry.
And there's gonna be
I'm done.
70 of them.
Y'all have to go ahead.
And there'll be 70 right across the beach, yeah.
Do we have a motion from the close the public part? Do we have a motion or a comment about next step on this, Brett?
I make a motion that we delay the application for development and
We recommend it.
and recommend to the council to delay it until we do further
Recommended
studies.
delay, so that would be your
Yes.
motion, okay? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Let's call a roll, which I've since lost already, call the paperwork. Okay, Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
I
Ms.
don't-
Metcalf,
I do not know.
okay, you gonna abstain?
I don't know.
Mr. Carey,
Yes.
I'm gonna say yes also. Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Okay. So, as you know, we're advisory, so the council will take this up at their particular meeting. We appreciate your input. We do have on the agenda the 19 apartment units as another thing, but if we delayed the PUD, then I think we delayed the 19 units on that. But we certainly did talk about them, I think, you know, I would just say from, I can't speak for the board, just from a personal standpoint, we appreciate St. Joe wanting to develop in our community. We do need the housing, as was indicated, for our residents. And I would ask you not to consider this as a heck no, we don't want you kind of program. We're just trying to, as you can see, we're very passionate about our little community, as you know, and we want to keep it the best we can, like it is. So that's why you get a lot of input from this. But we appreciate your time coming, and thank you very much.
And Bill, I wish you guys would come up with some more details on the first phase. And I understand that we've got a lot of phases in this book, it's gonna last 10, 20 years. But I'd like to see a lot of details on what's gonna happen in the next 3 to 5 years.
Oh, well, I was gonna say, on the first phase, we actually had fully developed, engineering plans that were gonna be presented as part of the development order. But you were mentioning a further out than just the first phase.
Well, I know that, I understand that, but I'd like more details on what's in the immediate future.
Sure. Understood.
And
Thank you for.
Good.
a lot of thoughtful planning needs to go into this. It came up earlier, but I'm pretty confident that boat canal is gonna be an issue. It already is. I grew up here, and I'm a pretty confident boater. And now that we have slips on either side of that canal, it's scary to me to go in and out when you pass another boat. And I don't know if you guys have done that. I encourage you to do it at some point. But when we put that many more boats that will come as a result of this, the first traffic light is gonna have to be placed in the boat canal. Something has to change.
You can come in and go out.
Yeah,
Like
good
coming
thought.
onto the expressway.
It's not wide like big passages in Panama City. It's gonna be a problem.
You know, some options would be nice, development options. I heard everything that was being said as far as with the canal and the issues and the traffic and the density. How about some different options? Everybody wants the housing, but damn, they're sardines. You know, I mean, come on. You know, we understand return on investment, design it a bit different, maybe some real upscale on some area that gets your return on investment, and some that maybe aren't quite as upscale in other to get the return, so you don't have to sardine them in. You know, and that solves part of the problems with your infrastructure, with your highway traffic. So find maybe some alternate ideas. Maybe don't be married to just one plan and look at some other things. I hate seeing 70 sardines on the Gulf, you know, and it's inconsistent with the rest of what Mexico Beach has. Look at some options and maybe some higher
Put the
end.
apartments at the other end.
Yeah, maybe
Put the
so,
apartments at the
exactly.
other end, put these single family homes up this end, by the
Exactly.
boat ramp.
Yeah.
Reverse it.
Yeah,
You would have all that traffic right there.
yes.
All right, good comments, we appreciate everybody coming. Do we have a motion to close?
Oh, we got paper issue.
A what?
Paper issue.
Can we do that next time?
Okay.
I'm kind of worn down.
We wore him out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Please read what Jim put in our package for the papers.
I mean, it's cut and dry. All you gotta do is
Prepared
read
to talk
it.
about it.